Hey, what's up, everybody? Fred Minnick here, and today I'm going to crack open one of my favorite craft distillers doing rye whiskey, and that is Dad's Hat out of Pennsylvania. Now, this is a 6-year-old rye whiskey. They're calling it a proprietary blend, but I don't think technically they have to call it a blend. They're just, think of it as batching. But blending is kind of becoming a clever, sexy term. But it's all from the same distillery, Dad's Hat in Pennsylvania. But it's a collaboration with the Barrel Club or the Whiskey Club Prime Barrel. I happen to be working with Prime Barrel on a few things. They are doing some barrel picks for me on for my Club Marzipan. So really excited. I've already tasted this. I was like, this is so good. And they sent me, I tasted the sample form before they were ready. Now they bottled it. I want to taste it now. And I really, since this is available to the public, I wanted to taste this and, see if it's as good as when I first had it. Now, this is that part of the video where I'm about to jump into a little history. And man, this foil's on there good. Good Lord. Hold on. I can't get this off. Man, this is better than wax. There we go. I got it. All right, now I'm all caught up with this foil. It's like freaking concrete. Holy shit. What? That was whoever made that, kudos to you for creating something so strong. And I got a pretty good grip. All right, anyway. So, Pennsylvania rye whiskey is so important to the story of American whiskey. In fact, they were making rye there in the early 1700s. You could make if we were to truly crown America's spirit, it would be rye whiskey. It would not be bourbon, which doesn't even really get a sniff until the late 1700s. Doesn't really get named until the early 1800s. You're just not looking at something that was on equal footing, because the English really was not, when we were colonies of the English, they were not fans of us distilling with corn because they wanted corn to be used for food and for livestock and so forth. So rye really was our country's first whiskey. And rye was plentiful. People distilled it, and it was lovely. George Washington was a rye distiller, our president. And it was distilled throughout the Northeast. Very, very popular. And in the 1800s, it was Pennsylvania rye whiskey and Kentucky bourbon. These two things were going head to head for the marketplace of the American liquor consumer. And it was so feverish that the congressman of Pennsylvania would argue with the congressman of Kentucky that their whiskey was better. And so they would have taste-offs, usually bourbon won. But there was always this back and forth between Pennsylvania rye and Kentucky bourbon. They were genuine rivals. Unfortunately, Kentucky... I link the fall of Pennsylvania rye to a couple things, but it really does begin prior to Prohibition. All the distillers knew Prohibition was coming, right? They all knew Prohibition was about to happen. And so I would say it was about between 1916 and 1918. The Pennsylvania rye distillers were finding ways to sell their barrels to islands in the Caribbean. Those barrels would later be bootlegged back in the United States. So it was a kind of a short-term profit effort. The Kentucky bourbon distillers were trying to do the same thing, but they were negotiating exclusively with Cuba. And Cuba wanted way too much for to house the barrels. It wasn't working out. Negotiations went south. So the Pennsylvania rye distillers had moved a lot of their stock to the Caribbean, whereas the Kentucky bourbon distillers kind of got stuck as Prohibition started. And so the distillers were like, yo, we got the Spanish flu going around. Hey, docs, don't you need whiskey to treat the people for the Spanish flu? And so you had you had this outcry from physicians wanting whiskey to be legalized for medicinal purposes. And so that's one of the big reasons why you had medicinal whiskey during Prohibition was the Spanish flu. But also you had the bourbon distillers who had all this whiskey, and they're like, shit, what do we do with this? We're stuck with it. We can't lose money. We're losing our asses as it is. Let's not lose everything. And so they found a way to get their brands in the medicinal market. So I think that's one thing that played a major role in it. The other thing is that, Kentucky's laws they've never been the best for starting a distillery. They've at least had people here working in the state legislature that would help them, and they had lobbies here, the Kentucky Distillers Association, large companies like Brown-Forman, National Distillers would always have a presence on Capitol Hill in Kentucky. And Pennsylvania, when they became a control state, meaning the government monopolized the sale of alcohol, they lost a lot of their political capital from a whiskey making perspective. They began to look at whiskey not as a tax effort. It was more of a I would say more of a burden. They put more of their emphasis on selling it versus making it. And I think that the way that Pennsylvania structured their state from an alcohol perspective after Prohibition would end up being one of the major death knells to the Pennsylvania rye movement. However, they were still alive and kicking, but the market just changed. When vodka comes out in the late 50s, early 1960s, the Kentucky bourbon distillers got punched and knocked down, but they would eventually get back up. The Pennsylvania rye distillers and the Maryland distillers would get punched and knocked down, and they wouldn't get back up. They didn't have the resources. They didn't have the people with the passion to carry on the brand. The last major brand from the major Pennsylvania brands was Michter's, and they folded in the late 1980s. Fortunately, they were acquired by Chatham Imports, who has turned them into what they are today. But Pennsylvania's rye story is beautiful. It's glamorous even, and it just sucks that they dwindled. So Dad's Hat is this return of Pennsylvania rye, and it's so exciting. And I get very excited about certain brands, and Dad's Hat's right up there with some of the most exciting brands for me personally, because again, I'm such a history fan. I love telling the story of whiskey, and I just feel like Pennsylvania deserves to have their seat properly at the table. You know what I'm saying? But so this is the Prime Barrel exclusive blend, proprietary blend. It's 6 years old, 129 proof, Pennsylvania rye whiskey. And I am told that this composite range will also be the representation of the 95 proof one down the road. So here we go. Oh, that is so beautiful. It smells like ocean air and grass and fresh cut grass. Smells like it's a weird note to call out, but some kind of like chocolatey melted Tootsie Roll, some kind of chocolate pie. I don't know, some kind of chocolate, but not chocolate, like some kind of chocolate-like thing, like a Tootsie Roll. Which if you smell a Tootsie Roll, you don't really smell them that well. You do when they're melted, but you can't really smell a Tootsie Roll like you would something coming out of the oven. But that's what's coming to my mind is like a melted Tootsie Roll. You open that wrapper up and it's like kind of gooey, and you're like, Now maybe I've just had too many melted Tootsie Rolls in my life, but whatevs. All right, here we go. Damn. Spice City, big old pepper spice, cardamom there, some cinnamon, got some clove, and I get like this kind of creamy, get a creaminess there, almost like a whipped cream, kind of right there in the middle, and I get like a fig Newton. So I like fig Newtons. I can't eat too many of those. That's one of those things that kind of like Jacqueline didn't like me eating for various reasons. I mean, mostly because if I eat them, I'm like, hey, babe, I'm about to fart. Yeah. Basically, anything that causes the gas, I get told I'm not supposed to eat. But, I'm a married man. Sometimes that's one of the things that brings you joy in life is just generally farting toward your spouse. Yep, I said that. I'm probably going to have to edit that out later. But for now, it's there. Okay, here we go. Get like an almond butter now on that second taste. But this is really delicious. This is really, really delicious. I don't know the bottle count on this. I need to find out. What the bottle count is. That cardamom note I mentioned is kind of like in that second tier of spice. It is now the leading flavor of this, which that happens occasionally, especially when you have a lot of spices in a whiskey. You will find that you get a lot. You can get a lot of spice coming at you at once, and your tongue isn't able to figure it out yet. So after you taste it a couple more times, one spice will come forward. And for me, the leading note in this is cardamom, and I love me some cardamom. This is I think this would go really great with some good Mexican food, some kind of spicy dish. I like putting spice on spice, so I want to taste this with like some Mexican food, some kind of Indian food, or what's another, or some kind of like spicy Chinese food too. So I like this for with a spicy ethnic dish, and I think it's probably too strong for something like barbecue. I think this would overtake barbecue, but I love this for pairing with food, like a spicy dish. I love this so much. It's so delicious. But yeah, hell of a job, y'all. Hell of a job, Dad's Hat. I'm such a fan. I root for the little guy all the time, but only when their whiskey's good. If their whiskey stinks, it's like, dang it, why couldn't that have been better? Fortunately for Dad's Hat, I haven't had that feeling yet with their stuff. That's going to do it for this review, y'all. I appreciate you tuning in. Be safe out there. I mentioned about those barrel picks. If you'd like to learn more about those barrel picks, you can head on over into my description where you will see more about Club Marzipan or my whiskey club. Just click on that link and you'll learn more about it. But be safe out there, y'all. Be safe. I said be safe. So be safe squared. And remember, vodka sucks unless it's being used to clean up the murder scene of a dead cat. Cheers.